Hi, my name is Robbie Tristan Szelei, and I'm in my early to mid-30s, somewhere there. I live in Chelsea, in New York, but originally I'm from Hungary, and I grew up there until I was 16. I came to the US as an exchange student when I was 16, and since then I lived all over the place, kind of like a gypsy. But back to my coming out story. I think it's very important that I actually grew up in Hungary. It's a very different environment, especially when it comes to LGBT issues, than it is here in the United States. I came out relatively late, and the reason for that is that I grew up in a small town in Hungary where no one really knew what gay was. I didn't even know what gay was until I moved to the big city, to the capital, to Budapest, where obviously everybody knew I was gay before even I knew I was gay. And it was through that my coming out in Budapest, in the big city, was really organic, just hanging out with people, meeting friends and like-minded people. It happened surprisingly easily and organically. I met someone and we started out as friends, and very quickly we realized that we are more than friends. But it was a lot more difficult to actually come out to my parents. And for 6 or 7 years, I already lived my life as an out gay person in Budapest, in the big city, away from my parents. And I didn't think it was relevant or important to come out to my parents. They live on the countryside, they have a totally different life, totally different values. I didn't understand why I should come out to them. And what I told myself is that I don't just want to come out to them and say, Mom, Dad, I'm gay, deal with it. What I wanted to do is put it into context and perspective. So I said, as soon as I meet someone that I want to spend the rest of my life with, I would like to introduce that person to my parents, and that will be my coming out story. So I met a guy from Warsaw, Poland, and after 6 or 7 months he asked me to move in with him in Poland, so that meant me relocating. So I thought, this is really the time to come out. I mean, if I don't use this opportunity, then I don't know when. So first I came out to my mom, and obviously it was a very difficult process preparing for it. You spent weeks and months, telling the same story over and over in your head. It's kind of like applying for a job, you're getting ready for that job interview, and you're constantly having that interview already in your head, and then it's time to just break the news and have that actual conversation. So I did that with my mom. We were both crying by the end. She tried to encourage me through the process. She was like, just say it. But at the end, she said one of the nicest things that she could have said. I told her about my partner, and she already met him once. We did go and visit as my friend, and she turned to me after my coming out and said, I remember him, he has beautiful eyes. And that moment of, bonding with my mom over the beauty of my partner's eye is when I knew I'm gonna be okay. Obviously, coming out to my dad, I knew it's gonna be more difficult. I think it's always more difficult for a gay guy to come out to your father. So that's why I started with my mom. And although my mom said she's not gonna tell my dad, I'm pretty sure she actually told him. And I thought it's gonna be an easy process in the sense that I already did it once. I did it with my mom. How difficult can it be second time around? So I broke into the same story, telling my dad the same rehearsed story that I already told my mom. And halfway through he stopped me and said, why didn't you tell me this before? We could have helped you. We could have taken you to therapy. And that's when my heart broke. And I just wanted to stop the story right there. I wanted to run away. I asked myself, why am I even doing this? He clearly doesn't understand me. Uh, if he doesn't understand me at this point, why does it matter for me if he knows that I'm gay or not? Yet, now looking back, it's the most important thing that I've ever done in my life. Yes, it was a difficult coming out with my dad, but our relationship half a year later became the best relationship that it has ever been before. Uh, Before that, our conversations were limited to asking me if I checked the oil level in my car and asking me if I had the latest service on the car or how much I'm making at my job. And I'm not saying that every day I want to go home and discuss my sex life with my dad, but we have a very healthy, caring, a lot more affectionate relationship that we ever had. My coming out when it comes to my friend and my close environment was actually really organic and surprisingly easy and comfortable. I think partly because my environment always knew that I was probably gay. I was quite feminine in my late teens and early 20s, and I was a ballroom dancer since I was 6 years old, so really there wasn't a big surprise over there. But I was also fortunate enough that I never really been bullied about it. Of course, every now and then, especially in my teenage years, there were some weird comments about me looking like a girl or being a bit more feminine than some of the jocks that I was hanging out with. But no major bullying. The one thing that was actually really interesting for me on a trip to the US, and this was already years later, back in my mid-20s, I went to Palm Springs and just walking down the street in Palm Springs with my boyfriend at that time, there were 2 or 3 cars driving by and people were screaming faggot or you guys go home, or just really weird comments, which was so strange for me because for me both Palm Springs and San Francisco, California, and the US in general was the place of acceptance. In my head it was some very liberal place, so it was really shocking that I got more bullying from people that I didn't know in the US than in conservative Hungary, post-communist Hungary. But I guess it's just my environment that was really, really supportive, and I'm very grateful for that. Also, it's funny that 2 weeks after I came out to my mom, with my best friend, we started organizing a gay party that became one of the largest gay parties in Eastern Europe, and we organized pride parades. So we were very active in the gay scene, but I needed a person for the door who was handling all the money, and it was actually my mom who became that person. So 2 weeks after I came out to her, there she was, the doorwoman of this gay party, and 2 weeks later she knew more gay people than I did, and she became the Debbie character from Queer as Folk. There were young gays reaching out to her, exchanging numbers. She was giving advice to them on how to come out and just supporting them in their decision, and it was beautiful to see. Growing up in post-communist Hungary, I always aspired to the US, and I think part of the reason was that somewhere deep within I always knew that I was gay and I could probably live a more open and full life as a gay man in the US than I could ever do in Hungary, especially at that time. So it was definitely part of the decision of moving here, but it was actually a really interesting path because after my exchange year here in the US, I didn't come back for 10 years. And the next time I came back was because of same-sex ballroom dancing. Back in Europe, we my best friend, we started participating in these dance competitions. He was also a ballroom dancer, I was a ballroom dancer, so we got together, started dancing and traveling Europe to all the places from Berlin to London to the Netherlands, and performing and competing in same-sex ballroom. And after winning the European Championship, we got an email from this organization in Sacramento, California, asking us to come and perform or compete at the first World Championship for same-sex dancing. So that's how I got back to the States. That's how I arrived in Sacramento, California. And after us dancing there, I actually met a guy in a bar in Sacramento who became my boyfriend for close to 5 years after that, and I actually moved back because of him. So the reason why I came to the US was for love via same-sex ballroom. I just want to encourage everyone to face those fears, and sometimes when you think that it's not important, that's probably the most important talk that you need to have. And it may be a difficult 5 minutes, hour, 2 months, half a year, but eventually I know it will pay off, because these people will realize that for you to come out to them and overcome this huge fear is probably one of the biggest things that you've ever done. And once they realize that you've done that because these people are important for you, they will come around and they will love you more than they ever loved you before.